part. There were a few parts I had to rewind. Specifically, the main one was the bar because it was so fucking funny. So Boba just does some shit. I can't remember what he does now, but he just goes rawr, and he even has his teeth showing, and he just explodes. It was so.
Oh, would you rather have the rawr or the Wilhelm scream?
See, that was okay. That's another discussion, because the Wilhelm scream I don't think showed up until the second movie. But the rawr, I wish they would have kept the rawr. I wish they would have new Wilhelm scream. It's just every now and then when someone died, they just went rawr.
Replace R2-D2's with a rawr.
Yeah. And then there's another part earlier in the movie. I'm sure you've probably seen it. Where they're getting attacked, they're trying to get into the area with the Viceroy, and Qui-Gon is like melting the door, sticking his lightsaber in there, and the droidicars, whatever, the Troyers.
The droidicas?
The droidicas. They show up, and they're firing at him, and then they have to get away, and they go so fucking fast. They just zip away. And then it even follows the droids as they're going around the corner, and they're like way the fuck down the hallway already. You see their lightsabers going do 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 do.
And that power never shows up again in the entire series.
And I'm like, that could have saved so many lives.
Well, I mean, now they can just teleport stuff around the galaxy, so, you know.
This is true. This is very true. But I have to wonder, like, I think it's actually come out that was actually like a bad cut. Like, they just did a really bad editing job on that scene. Yet they never changed it. They changed so many other things.
George Lucas had so much going on, he just said, screw it, let's just keep it in there.
Leave the super speed. Then it's the biggest, it's actually, I would say that could be the biggest plot, the biggest actual breaking of the universe, besides the fucking light speed jump where she hits the freaking Snoke ship in The Last Jedi.
Oh, yeah.
Because that is like, I don't know why, if you can actually hit things in light speed jumps, why wouldn't you just have like completely unmanned ships that are just giant blocks of metal and they just light speed into things as weapons?
What gets me with The Last Jedi is the whole plot of that movie revolves around them just like having to chase the ship super slowly when they still have the ability to go to like light speed or whatever.
Yes. Why
didn't they just send a group of ships to just do that and get in front of them and then cut them off? Because they're stupid. That's honestly the biggest argument I've heard. You were saying
it's like they didn't think they were being evil. So this is the argument. They were just being so evil that they felt like they could. There was nothing that the enemy, I want to call them rebels, but they're resistance. They wanted to be evil, so they're just going to keep chasing them cat and mouse style rather than actually do something to end everything.
Well, I mean, it's like I said earlier, the real villain of that movie was Rian Johnson. And his sidekick, Admiral Holdo.
Who
is perfect and stunning and brave.
Yeah. Ball gown.
That's some good military attire you got there.
Like when we went and saw The Last Jedi on opening night, when we got to the point where Holdo was revealed, I honestly thought she was the villain. I really did think she was the villain. Throughout the entire movie, after she's revealed as this person, I'm like, who the fuck is this person? Why is she suddenly in control?
Can you imagine how fast that movie would have gotten like canceled if she wasn't the villain?
It's very true. No, she has to be actually making the correct decisions, and she just doesn't want to tell anyone because people should trust her because she's the one in control. And honestly, if you think about it, that's what Rian Johnson must have done while making the movie. Just trust me. Just trust me. I'm in control. I don't need to redraft this script.
Ryan?
I don't need to reshoot things.
Ryan? Yeah? You been drinking again? I like how we started talking about the Phantom Menace and then it just turned into us railing on The Last Jedi.
Well, that's a hard part because everything just goes into how bad it
And it's weird because the prequels aren't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. It's just the sequels are so bad that
Yeah. Well, I'm honestly, I was more pleasantly surprised rewatching the sequels. Really, because like I said, Phantom Menace might actually be my favorite prequel. I mean, yeah, what I meant to say earlier was prequels, not sequels. But the Phantom Menace might actually be my favorite prequel. And it might partially be because of nostalgia goggles, because I was 10 when that movie came out. And I went and saw it in theaters, and I freaking loved it.
First Star Wars movie I ever saw in theaters was in 2002 when Attack of the Clones came out, and I was like 6.
Yeah.
And I remember I was like, oh, laser sword.
They do have a lot of laser swords in Attack of the Clones. That might be the one that has the most.
Yeah. I think one of my biggest takeaways from the Phantom Menace, the Jedi, whenever Anakin is talking to them for the first time, and they're like, yeah, your feelings weigh on your mother and whatnot. They're dicks about it, too.
They really are.
Like, that poor kid.
It is a poor kid. And then I have to think, why wouldn't they fucking go back and get his mom? Like,
yeah.
Why does the Jedi Council just, you're so focused on your mother and it's going to lead you to the dark side. We're just going to let her die.
You know what else is dark is allowing people in, like, the outer system, or in, like, the same systems that you're supposed to help kind of be peacekeepers in. They're owning slaves still.
Yes. That's a weird thing. It's like they own slaves on this planet. And nothing changes when they switch to the Republic in The Last Jedi, because they still have slaves.
And these are the good guys?
These are the good guys. That's another thing that's interesting, because it's like, I actually think that Watto is actually entertaining to watch. He's a little flying guy.
Yeah,
like, he's actually kind of entertaining to watch, and I actually liked him, but he's a slave owner. So it's like, I don't think I'm allowed to like him at that point. Jar Jar's people don't like him. He's in big doo-doo.
Because he's a Sith.
Let's see. Jar Jar's people give them a ship, and they take Jar Jar into the planet core with big fish, and there's always a bigger fish. But not only once, that happens twice. There's a bigger fish 2 times.
You know what's crazy, though, is when I first saw the movie, the CGI didn't look great, and it looks even worse now.
It does. It really does. I don't know. I think the Blu-rays that I have might have been touched up for a little bit because they actually looked half decent most of the time. Like, I was actually a little surprised. Like, Jar Jar's skin has a little bit of texture. It's like maybe PS4 graphics, maybe.
Kratos would be proud.
Kratos would be proud. Although after saying that, I'm reading it right here. It says the CGI is very cartoony.
I don't know what YouTube video I heard this on, but I heard someone, when they were talking about the final battle with the, whatever Jar Jar Binks frog-looking people are.
The Gungans.
The Gungan, yes. The final battle between them and the B-1 battle droids looks like it takes place on like a Microsoft Word background from 2004.
It does. It really does take place.
I don't know who said that, but they nailed it on the head.
Yeah.
And I wonder if George Lucas did that on purpose because they were running out of money, and he just decided, hey, you know what? Let's copy and paste that onto the screen.
Pretty much. Like, I want to see the if that's the case, then I'd have to say that Chewbacca's planet in the Clone Wars is a copy paste of like the Windows 10 little cove.
It's so funny though to think about. You have all these characters from the original trilogy that show up in the prequels as like little cameos and stuff, and then you have R2-D2 who went with Anakin when he murdered a bunch of younglings. And then Darth Vader didn't recognize him.
Yeah. Darth Vader definitely should have recognized R2.
I know they had comics about when Darth Vader found C-3PO in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
They do have a comic about that, but, I mean, he's fucking Darth Vader. Freaking
R2 was the droid in his ship for Episode 3. Like, he was like, how all the ships have little droids that he was the droid in Anakin's ship, and yet he fucking didn't recognize it.
R2's an accessory to war crimes, I guess.
Yeah. I've actually always thought it was really stupid. I'm sure, I know a lot of people have, that Anakin actually makes C-3PO. And, like, not only does he make C-3PO, but he makes him to, like, perfect specifications, because there's another protocol droid at the beginning of the movie.
Yes.
That is literally the C-3PO, but silver with a woman's voice.
Maybe that's all Anakin changed in it. He got tired of hearing the girl voice on it, so he switched it over to the even more annoying C-3PO voice.
The very glorious golden C-3PO.
And then for some reason in the sequel trilogy, they gave him like a different color arm. Did you just notice that?
Yeah, that was a thing, because at the end of The Force Awakens, he has his normal arm back. It's literally for just a few scenes.
Why did they do that?
I don't know. It's like they don't have time to explain. Why is Luke Skywalker's lightsaber in the basement of this cantina on this random planet? I don't have time to explain that.
But we'll make a comic. You buy the comic.
The movie has to stand up on the story that it is actually telling with the
like
movie.
Disney, I'm gonna be honest with y'all, I can't read.
Oh yeah, here we go. Here's another scene that I was confused by. So Anakin, the notes I have here. Anakin is born of the Force. He has no father, so he's Jesus. He's Force
Space Jesus. I thought Rey was supposed to say Space Jesus.
She's Space Better Jesus, because Anakin was not actually able to kill the Emperor. So Rey has to do it. Her frickin' Metachlorian count is, let's see, Qui-Gon takes Anakin's, and it's 20,000 is the count that he has. So hers must be, I don't know, 8 quintillion. I mean, think about it. She was able to beat the Emperor with 2 lightsabers, which is not something that Anakin never does. Anakin never has 2 lightsabers. Oh, wait, yeah, he does.
Yeah, when he fights Dooku.
Both times he fights Dooku, he has 2 lightsabers.
Yep.
Immediately, I think the second time he fights him, it's because he disarms him and takes his lightsaber, and then he cuts his head off.
Say what you want about George Lucas and some of the prequels. I mean, like I said earlier, they're not fantastic, but they're definitely a lot better than the sequels. But in all George Lucas's movies, the most consistent thing with him is that he can write really good villains.
Yeah.
Dooku was a very elegant bad guy. He's one of my favorites. Maul was cool. The Clone Wars did Maul really, really well. If you get the chance to watch that cartoon, what's funny is George Lucas, from somewhere I was reading, wanted to bring Maul back in a sequel trilogy and make him the bad guy, and Darth Talon, I think was this girl's name. She's like a red Twi'lek. Was going to be his apprentice. And it was going to just go a whole different direction that they ended up doing, and we saw what happened.
With Han Solo. I don't know. Because they never went back to that, did they? Does Darth Maul never shows up in a TV show or anything, does he? Yeah,
Darth Maul shows up again. He shows up in the Clone Wars, the TV series, and he's actually one of the main bad guys throughout the Clone Wars series, and then...
Well, what I mean is like the Disney movies. Because he shows up as a cameo at the end of Han Solo.
Yes, and Disney did a series called Star Wars Rebels, which is like a loose sequel to the Clone Wars, but it takes place between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, and Darth Maul's actually, like, he's kind of an anti-hero in that, and he turns into kind of a more of a villainous role towards like the middle of the show, and he actually gets another rematch with Obi-Wan. They teased this fight. I remember the week it came out, they teased this fight. Like, they're showing the trailers, and they're like, oh, it's going to be so epic. Obi-Wan beats him in 3 moves. And at first, I absolutely hated it. I wanted to see a really cool lightsaber fight. But the more I thought about it, the more that whole scene makes sense because of how Obi-Wan does it. Like, Darth Maul tries to pull the same move he used to kill Qui-Gon on Obi-Wan, and he does the thing where he tries to hit him with the hilt of his lightsaber, and Obi-Wan just takes a step back and cuts his lightsaber in half and kills Darth Maul. It was so weird, though, looking back on it when I was younger, because I always hated that they did that. Then as, I got older, and it's really well done. And I really enjoy it now. It's weird how your tastes and stuff change.
This is true. That definitely does happen. Yeah, I never actually watched the CG Clone Wars shows. I think I occasionally caught an episode of the first run of it, but it was the cartoon one that they aired on Toonami in between the Clone Wars and episode 3. That was the one I watched the whole thing because that's where they introduced General Grievous.
Yeah, where they had the guy who did the Samurai Jack cartoon draw on it. Yes, I remember that.
I fucking love Samurai Jack. Because that was good. Because those were only like 6-minute episodes. When they actually introduced General Grievous and make him look like this insane badass that can like take on like I don't even remember how many Jedi there were. I remember Mace Windu was there, but there was a shit ton of Jedi.
I vaguely remembered this. They kind of they make him out to be almost like a horror movie villain.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just massacred a ton of people in that.
Like I have this image in my head, and this actually could be 100% constructed image in my head. But I have this image of him having his 4 arms out, each holding a lightsaber, and him balancing on one foot, holding another lightsaber with his other foot.
I don't remember that.
I have this image in my head, and I'm fairly certain it's real, but I can't remember. And I guess I could go back and watch it. But
I mean, I made that comment earlier about how George Lucas can really do villains well, but I think that really only applies to like kind of main villains. There are a lot of secondary villains that he does that kind of just like, oh, that character seems very, very interesting, and then they are no longer in the movie.
Yeah.
Like Jango Fett, Boba Fett, Jabba the Hutt reappears several times, but then Grievous is supposed to be the super interesting character.
Honestly, I remember the fight with Obi-Wan versus Grievous in episode 3 being a lot better than it actually is. But it's like he has like these 4 lightsabers and he's doing the spinning move, and then Qui-Gon just starts cutting his arms off. Not Qui-Gon, but fucking Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan just starts cutting his arms off left and right, and then he has to run away.
What cracks me up about that, though, is that fight could have probably been handled in 2 seconds because Obi-Wan has the Force and Grievous does not. And I don't see why Obi-Wan couldn't have just like picked him up and threw him off the ledge.
Yeah. That's how he gets damaged in that cartoon is because I think it's Mace Windu. Grievous is trying to get onto a ship and Mace Windu uses the Force to crush in his chest. And that's like why I always assume that's why he was coughing in episode 3.
I mean, yeah, Mace Windu is like always the practical thinker, you know. He was going to kill the Emperor, but Anakin's little bitch ass just decided.
God. That's, there's another video I need to send you. Remember the Meat Canyon guy I sent you things?
Yeah.
So he did a video called Anakin is easy to, Anakin is easy to manipulate or something like that. And it's just Anakin being manipulated by the Emperor to kill Mace Windu. And it's incredibly easy because it really is.
I feel like the whole Revenge of the Sith arc with Anakin could have been very easily avoided had he just sat down and had a conversation with someone. Like even Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Just if you sat down and talked to somebody, all of this wouldn't have happened. But
yeah, the
plot needed it to happen so we could get the guy in the cool black armor.
What I don't get is why they turned Palpatine into a groomer for Anakin. Like he has some serious pedophile vibes.
Yeah. He's taking him to see plays and
like, look at the bubbles. Look at the play with the bubbles. I mean, obviously you're not supposed to pay attention to the bubbles. Yeah. You're supposed to pay attention to Darth Plagueis the Wise. But why the fuck are there bubbles flying?
Come to the dark side, Anakin. Which that would explain so much, though. Maybe that was like it. Palpatine and Anakin were having like the secret love affair, and that's why he used the phrase "I need him" when Mace Windu was about to chop his head off. That's why he didn't want Dooku around. Dooku was too old for him.
I mean, maybe he could have switched fetishes halfway through. It's like maybe he had an old guy fetish. And he was like, well, now I look older, so I might as well have the young kid.
and then, like if you think about it, and all the way into Return of the Jedi, he's like, oh, I got a younger version of Anakin now.
Yeah.
He's like that billionaire that just keeps dating the younger models.
this is actually something I have to praise about
The Phantom
Phantom
Menace?
Menace. I said, it's interesting how there is no music during the race, the pod race. That's honestly the thing I had the most to say about was the pod race.
Rawr.
Not only just rawr. Say, there's no music during the race. They just let it play out, and the actions, the racers, the action of the racers are what what make you feel, rather than the music. Because like the music's not trying to convince you that someone's in danger or something's about to happen. Like what's actually happening in the race is what you're paying attention to. And then we get to the point. I said the music kicks in when Anakin is actually in trouble, and that's when I think it's what happens is at the beginning of the race, Sebulba like walks up and like breaks something on his pod, and then eventually he loses power and he has to like try and do stuff.
Dirty cheater.
But that's the thing, he's a dirty cheater. But at this point, Anakin actually is like doing things and he's moving stuff around and he's trying to figure out what's going on and to get power to his pod, so he keeps going. Unlike Rey, who just rips shit out of the fucking Millennium Falcon, and it's fixed all of a sudden.
And she goes, I bypassed it.
She bypassed it. There was a problem, and she bypassed the need to write the reason as to why they got out of it.
And that right there is a good example of just the difference in the talent of the writers between both movies. I mean, J.J. Abrams has some good movies that he's made, but Star Wars is not one of them.
Yeah. See, my actual note here is Anakin has to move things around and make adjustments to fix his pod on the run instead of just ripping things out and declaring that it's fixed now. Then I have the only good acting is Qui-Gon, C-3PO, Watto, and Obi-Wan.
But
Obi-Wan at times.
Let's be real, Liam Neeson does carry that entire movie.
He does.
And he is really the main character, which makes it suck so much more that he's really the only character that dies in the movie.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true.
And and I feel like they kind of wasted his character at the end. I get that, he's supposed to, the Duel of the Fates is supposed to be like this major thing where if he were to have survived that, he would have gone on to being a father figure for Anakin, and Anakin wouldn't have turned evil. At least that's what George Lucas is implying.
Yeah. Okay.
At the same time, though, it's like you had Liam Neeson. He's a pretty decent actor. He was back then. I don't know what he's been up to lately, but
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what he's up to recently either. But he's in almost every movie I've ever watched with Liam Neeson in it. It's usually good. Like the one anyone's been up to is going to be The Gray. The Gray is really.
That is a very good movie. I can't wait to score that whenever we start doing the list.
That is a really good movie. Although it is kind of silly how he's like charging the wolf at the end, the alpha wolf at the end.
You gotta do what you gotta do, man.
You gotta do what you gotta do. Yeah, you still gotta watch that movie where Idris Elba punches a lion.
So in the Gray, I do think that scene at the end where he charges the wolf, he's definitely 100% going to die of hypothermia in that scene.
Yeah,
there's no way around it. So I wonder if that was him like hallucinating.
So let's just go over Phantom Menace. So for plot, I gave it a 60.
I gave it a 65.
Story structure, I actually gave it a 70. I felt like that's kind of high. But I actually, after watching the movie and trying to pay attention as closely as possible, I felt like it actually had a really, like the story structure was actually pretty good.
I also gave it a 65 for story.
All right, next I have is characters.
So, characters, I mean, we said that a D is 54 to 40. I actually gave the characters a 54.
54? Okay.
And I think the only thing that keeps it from being an F is probably Liam Neeson.
Yeah.
Or Qui-Gon as a character, because Anakin is kind of annoying. The Jedi are almost stiff in the movie for the most part.
Yeah. I actually give Anakin more credit for the pod racing scene itself.
Yeah.
Because he does a really good job in that scene. It's everything leading up to the pod racing, and then everything after the pod racing.
Yeah.
Is so bad.
And what really, because with all the characters in there, like Qui-Gon, if you took away Jar Jar Binks, I think that would probably move my character score up maybe about 10 points.
Jar Jar Binks is kind of negative.
That is, and this is like, we're kind of regurgitating what everyone complains about it, but everyone complains about that for a reason.
He is so fucking irritating. Which actually another note that I had was that there's a scene in the movie, the scene where they're working on the pod racer on the day before the race. And I'm sitting there like, why the fuck is Jar Jar working on the pod racer? What the fuck is he doing? You're telling me this motherfucker has any engineering skills?
What gets me is the scene where they're sitting at the table and he just keeps eating the fruit. And I don't know why. I know it's supposed to be played for laughs. It was annoying.
It's incredibly annoying. But you're grateful when Qui-Gon stops him.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for me, Qui-Gon is not enough. Liam Neeson is not enough to save it from an F for characters. For me, I gave it a 40 for characters. All right, world building.
World building. I think this is straight up the highest score I have for this movie. I have it at a 76.
76.
And that's because it adds on to the Star Wars mythology.
Okay.
And it is a prequel, and its job is to literally build up this world that George Lucas has created.
Yeah.
That being said, I probably should have knocked that score down a little bit whenever you pointed out that they never used that almost teleportation style move they used at the beginning of the movie.
Well, that's the thing. You really can't knock it for that because it's admitted that's an editing error. It's still
there.
It's still in the movie.
Oh no, world building wasn't the highest score for this movie. We'll get to what was higher here in a minute.
Yeah. So I got world building at a 60. So acting is the next one I have up.
Again, I said it earlier when we were talking. Liam Neeson carries this movie. Ewan McGregor is good at times. Acting, I gave this movie a 51.
A 51?
Yeah.
So I gave 5 points for every actor that I liked. So it got 20.
So my thought process with this was just everyone, because we were trying to say that 50 is supposed to be like kind of the average.
Yeah.
No one really stands out, so I was gonna like just straight up say a 50, but then Liam Neeson does okay, so I gave it an extra point for Liam Neeson.
Yeah. That's kind of how I think about it. Is like every movie should start at a 50. Period. Every single thing should start at a 50. Things that make it better should bring it up. Things that make it worse should bring it down. And it's kind of this back and forth. And that's how you figure out if something is an average movie or if it's below average or above average. With acting in this movie, I mean, Qui-Gon is really good. C-3PO is really good. Watto's actor is really good. And Qui-Gon's actor, or not Qui-Gon, but Anakin, Obi-Wan's actor is good, but the fact that he barely ever says anything.
It seems like he only has maybe 15 minutes of screen time in that whole movie.
Yeah, he doesn't have a
And
lot.
He's supposed to be this major character going forward in the trilogy. I mean, he is, and Ewan McGregor does a great job in the other two movies, which, I mean, we'll get to that here in a few minutes, I'm sure.
Yeah. But that was the problem, is that there's so much bad acting in The Phantom Menace that the only thing I could figure out was that they're so bad, I have to award points for every person that I think did a good job. And that was 5. That's where I came down to 5 points and why I got a 20. Because despite the fact that those actors are really good in my mind, everyone else does so bad. Seriously, it's horrible throughout. All right, the next one I have up is special effects. I feel like I might have inflated it because, like I said, I think the DVDs I watched might have been touched up. I don't know why, but I gave special effects a 70. That was the highest score I gave it.
Oof. Special effects for me. I watched the Disney Plus version. I watched it on projector, big old projector in my living room. It does not hold up.
No,
it does not. And we talked about this earlier, especially like for some of those last battle scenes. I gave it a 44.
Yeah, I do feel like I might have overinflated it. I might have been in a particularly good mood while I was watching it, which unfortunately is not good. Rar was very much a good special effect. Okay. Cinematography. Now I gotta think about the number 4. What'd you give it?
I gave it a 72. And that was just because we
72.
get some good like planet shots and that final lightsaber fight scene in it.
Okay. I have to say, I love the final lightsaber fight between Darth Maul and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. But where the fuck are they?
That's a good question.
Because they were in a standard fucking hangar that you would expect to see anywhere in any fucking thing that has spaceships. And then all of a sudden, they walk through a door and fucking Maul just throws this thing at the door, which actually is a really good use of the Force. That he throws this thing at the door to open it. And suddenly they're in this gigantic room with bottomless pits that has massive light pillars in it and walkways with no fucking railing over bottomless pits. And then they're walking, they go through this whole fight scene through it, and they're very slowly going towards this room with a bottomless pit in it again, that for some reason has laser doors that are constantly opening and closing into it.
I'm willing to bet
What the fuck?
there is an answer out there somewhere on Google. I'm just too lazy to find it.
I have to assume that the answer is that George Lucas wanted it to take place on some kind of a weird alien spaceship, but for some reason forgot he was on a planet. So, as much as I love that final fight scene, I was confused trying to figure out where the fuck they even were in this fucking castle that's all been stone structure, and it's all been made of stone, and there's been occasional future things, but for the most part, I don't know what the fuck this room is. Alright, cinematography. Unfortunately, I didn't think about that for it, so I'm going to give it a 60, based on objective evidence.
All right, so what is next on there?
Next I have is music.
I have music listed as score, like the score of the movie, which, I mean, when we were texting back and forth, that confused you a little bit, didn't it?
Yes.
Honestly, the score, I did say earlier, world building was the highest, and then I corrected myself. Score is the highest rated thing on here because it is that classic kind of Star Wars theme. You can't really... I have that listed as an 86. Like I said, it is the classic Star Wars theme. You can't really go wrong with it. Unless you're in some of the spin-off movies, and don't even get me started on that, because some of those scores are not very good. Yeah.
So, when I think of music, I'm thinking very much of, do I remember the music after the movie is over? Am I going to hum along any tune? And how much has that song stuck in my head, especially with a movie like this that I watched first when I was 10?
Yeah.
And how much has that stuck in my head? And the fact that most every song in this movie is something that I could probably hum right now actually gave it a 90.
I love how diverse the scores are.
That one's pretty close. You gave it an 86, I gave it
Yeah.
All right, the last one I have on here is fun, which, like I said, I have to translate that into entertainment, or how much you like.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, how much you like the movie.
So what did you give it?
I gave it a 60.
I gave it a 60 as well.
You gave it a 60 as well?
Yes. There are parts that I really enjoyed. It's just, the movie really does drag on. They spend so much time talking politics and all this other stuff, and it's like, this is Star Wars. I want to watch shit get blown up.
This is true. Like, I see, it's actually something that the politics weren't as intrusive in this as I remember them being when I watched it again. I don't know. There's definitely still there, and they definitely are probably the slowest, most boring points of the entire movie. But I don't know. It's really when you get into the Attack of the Clones is when the politics really gets like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Why is there so much politics in this fucking movie?
Jar Jar Binks should be a Sith.
Yes, I believe he should absolutely be a Sith. Not only should it be a Sith, but it's a Sith.
A sip.
It should be a sip. Give me some sip. Not only should Jar Jar Binks be a Sith, but he should have been drug out of retirement in order to become the Sith in the Dark World.
He was really just Plagueis reincarnate.
And he was just in retirement. He was at home. And then the fucking then Snoke randomly dies, and he feels it in the Force, and he's like, "Ah, oh, fuck! I better do it myself."
Ray's wandering through your fucking exegol or some shit, and you just see Darth Jar Jar's lightsaber ignite, and he's like, "You send deep doo doo now." Oh God, I wish they would have done that. That'd have been so funny.
When the droids take over the city of Naboo, the city in Naboo, or on Naboo, whatever, there's literally no fight. It's like the droids just walk into the city, and then suddenly they're like marching people around. And all the droids are just around. There's no fight. They just take the city.
They really do, don't they?
Yeah, there's no... And I'm sitting there watching, because there's a plot point later that it's obviously a trick of them trying to get the Queen to contact Naboo, but because they're saying that people are dying constantly. And I'm like, who the fuck's dying? The only fight scene there was when the Jedi jumped down from that and they free the Queen and run into the hangar. That's the only fight scene in that entire
we were talking about earlier, like harking back to the Queen thing. You're saying, did the guards know that the Queen was actually the Queen's handmaiden?
Yeah. Because it's Padme. Because Padme is actually the Queen, and the freaking Queen is a body double for the guard. But do the guards actually know this? Because if the guards know this, why the fuck did they just let her go into fucking
well, she did kind of order them to.
She ordered them to, but seriously, it's like if you're a queen that's on the run from a fucking federation that's trying to take over your planet, and you're just gonna go fuck around on some desert planet.
Well, I mean, she did meet the father of her children there, and he put the moves on her. Are you an angel?
That line is.
How do they know what angels are? This is Star Wars. Is there like a Jesus out there?
No. Because he literally says they're from a specific planet.
Oh, he does. That's right.
He says, I think they're from, I don't know, some fucking Mumba planet. I don't fucking know.
So, what was your final verdict on the movie?
So, adding cinematography brought the score down. No, I take that back. It didn't actually change the score for me. It actually brought it from a 58.8 to a 58.9, which gives it a 5.9 out of 10. From me.
My final score was a 63.66 out of 100. And then if we average our two scores together, we get 61.28 for the first movie on the list.
So, 61.28, which would give it a 6.1 out of 10. Which,
in the score calculation, would be a C. Mine, no, it would just be a C.
It's not exactly unsurprising in my mind.
No, not at all.
Like, actually, our numbers are definitely different, but there's a lot that are pretty freaking close.
Yeah, and it's crazy how close the final averages were too. They were within 5 of each other.
Yeah,
I think. I don't know. I'm bad at math.
I'm bad at math too, which is why I got this pointless calculator.
My wife is the math major. I didn't go to college.
All right. Do we have any final things to say about the Phantom Menace?
I want to stab Jar Jar Binks.
That is rather violent. Jar Jar Binks is best character that has ever been put to film, and I want anyone who thinks otherwise to come fight me, bro. I think my final things I'd say would be that I like this movie. So this movie had an up and down with me, because when I first watched it, I fucking loved it. I wanted to go back and watch the old Star Wars movies because I was 10 years old at the time. And then as I got older, I completely hated it. Like, if we had done this scoring during that time, I probably would have given it like a fucking 3 or something. It would have ended up with like a 3 for me rather than a 5.9. But now I've watched it, actually paying attention to it. I've actually liked it more than I thought I would. Like I said, I'm starting to think it might actually be my favorite of the prequels.
It's not my favorite of the prequel.
It's not a lot of people's favorite.
No.
A lot of people really fucking hate this movie.
I don't dislike the movie by any means. I think it's a decent movie, like I think it earns that C. I really do.
Yeah.
It's just so long, and that's really, I think that's really my biggest complaint. Whenever I was putting my note down, because under these things I do kind of like a little paragraph that's 2 to 3 sentences long at the most, unless it's a Nick Cage movie. And in it, the main complaint is its overinflated runtime, and the CGI doesn't really hold up today. And that's something that's going to occur a lot with a lot of the movies from 1995 to 2005.
Yeah, they had to create things to put into their movies
Yeah.
at that time.